The Straw King, Chapter 11. He was too late. All around them, Ginger's soldiers flew off the terraplanes that had concealed them from the lion's army. More emerged from shallow trenches they covered with strips of sod. The lion's army was backed up against the impenetrable wall of the castle, with Ginger's soldiers blocking any possibility of escape. Ginger had known they were coming all along, and lain in wait until she could trap them against the palace itself. Lula realized what was happening a second after the Scarecrow did. "To arms, monkeys!" she bellowed, whirling to face the oncoming soldiers. The dead-eyed girls were impossible to tell apart. Even their armor matched. They raised their identical pistols, surging toward the lion's forces. Suddenly, the winged monkeys rose up in the air, and for a brief, terrible moment, the Scarecrow thought they were all abandoning the battlefield. But one by one, the monkeys began to dive-bomb Ginger's soldiers. One monkey grabbed a girl and flew her up into the air with her. She screamed in fury as he soared upward, dropping her to the top of his arc. She hit the ground with a sickening crunch. The other monkeys quickly followed suit, seizing Ginger's soldiers off the battlefield and hurling them at the ground or the castle walls. Gaping in terror, the Scarecrow was rooted to the spot by the sight of the carnage in front of him. "There he is!" Ginger screamed. She was dressed for battle in blood-red armor, and her lipstick was an even brighter shade of red. "The Straw King! Destroy him!" She was pointing directly at him. The nearest of Ginger's soldiers raised their pistols, firing a hail of bullets that rippled through his cloth, arms, and legs. "Oh no!" the Scarecrow said. Then he turned around and ran. "Get him!" Ginger screamed. "Don't let him escape!" But the lion's army leapt forward with a furious roar, laying into the soldiers with claws and teeth. The girl soldiers, distracted by the onslaught, fired madly into the oncoming Majoret. A crocodile snapped its huge jaw shut on a girl's arm, ripping it from her shoulder. A wolf darted forward, tearing out another girl's throat. For just a moment, it seemed like the fight might turn to their favor. In the total chaos, the Scarecrow was momentarily overlooked. Dodging flying bodies, he made his way to the edge of the carnage. But Ginger hadn't forgotten about him. Her moat had been outfitted for battle. Spiky armor plated with each side, forming a protective shell that covered her legs. A gun was mounted above its windshield that fired rapidly into the melee. She carried a pistol in one hand and a sword in the other, piloting the mobs with her feet. She slashed furiously with her sword hand, while somehow aiming and firing shot after shot with the other. Her soldiers rallied around her, and more animals began to fall to the blood-soaked ground, and she cut her way toward the Scarecrow. "The potion, you idiot!" Glinda's voice was as clear in his ear as if she'd actually been standing next to him. "Of course!" He fumbled in his pocket for her potion, and it slipped through his fingers, clattering to the ground. A stray bullet thudded into the air inches from the bottle, sending it flying. "No!" the Scarecrow moaned, diving after it. Ginger was nearly upon him, screaming with rage and firing shots into the air. At the last moment, he reached the bottle and it fumbled with the stopper. "Goodbye, you pathetic excuse for a man," Ginger sneered. He looked up in terror. She loomed over him, her weapons glittering in the sun. Her pistol was pointed directly at his head. The bullets might not cause lasting damage to his arms and legs, but that didn't mean a shot between his eyes wouldn't end him. Ginger tightened her finger on the trigger, just as the Scarecrow rolled frantically to one side and tilted Glinda's bottle toward his mouth. He squeezed his eyes shut and waited for the end. All around him, the sounds of the battle vanished as suddenly as if someone had brought the lid down on a piano. The Scarecrow opened one eye. He was still alive. Ginger was still standing over him, but her pistol hand had dropped to her side, and her face was a mask of confusion and fury. Her mouth moved, but he couldn't hear a sound she was making. He was surrounded by a shimmering pink bubble, magic moving across its surface like an iridescent sheen. Ginger fired at the ground all around her, but when her bullets hit the Scarecrow's bubble, they slowed and stuck as if she'd fired into a vat of gelatin, then slowly dissolved into silvery liquid that ran down the bubble sides to the ground. The Scarecrow stared at Ginger, but she wasn't looking at him. She was looking at where he'd just been. He couldn't see him, and she couldn't shoot him. Glinda's magic had worked. He almost whooped with glee, but he didn't know if the bubble would conceal any noise he made too, and it was best to play safe. Ducking flying limbs and hopping over straggling bodies, the Scarecrow made its way around the edge of the battlefield back to the hedge maze, which was quiet and empty. He had no idea how long Glinda's magic potion would last, and he didn't want to be in the middle of a battlefield when it wore off. "Find the Scarecrow! Destroy the beast!" Ginger screamed. Her army fought with renewed ferocity. It looked like the beasts were struggling to hold up against the girl's superior firepower. "Retreat!" Lulu shouted. "Monkeys and animals, to me!" The monkeys flapped in the air, hurtling toward where Lulu hovered, and the lion's surviving soldiers fought their way to where the monkeys fled in a tight circle. One by one, the monkeys swooped down and picked up their passengers. There were far more monkeys than animals this time. Ginger fired at each of the monkeys as they came into range, taking down several. At the last moment, the Scarecrow realized he would be left behind, and ran frantically toward where the last two monkeys were struggling to lift the lion into the air as Ginger's soldiers shot at them furiously. "Help!" the Scarecrow shouted. "Take me too!" But the monkeys didn't see him, and they couldn't hear him either. "Where's the Scarecrow?" the lion shouted. "We can't leave him." "No time!" Lulu screamed. "We can't look for him now. We're getting massacred down there. We have to go back for him. He's my friend," the lion bellowed, struggling. But the monkeys had already hoisted him far above the battlefield. The Scarecrow watched in despair as the last of the animals were carried to safety, when he felt a pair of arms wrapped around him. "Let's get you out of here," Glinda said in his ear. There was a bright flash of pink light, and then the battlefield, and Ginger's astonished soldiers, disappeared in a puff of glittery pink smoke.